당도 이제 곰들랑아도 곰 냠는 제발라 안 되려 곰들라 이게 지곰치다 조금 친이어레스 대단하다 니베게 김전디 아니 지수제 먹고 손셰베게 되게다 뭐도 견제 아니 예수시와라 손셰베게다 랍뒤 도스는 마 도수조 공되게 도스는 장제 아니 조금다 제곰다 조금 니베게 곰 디토나 곰고야디 도스에 센도스가 뒤져야 되는 쉬로.
Good afternoon. This morning we started to look at the final outline in this chapter, the need to employ two kinds of practice. And the two kinds of practice refer to the two types of meditation, that of analytical and placement. And Lama Tsongkhapa first presented two quotations by Maitreya and then a third by Shantideva, presenting, and thereafter Lama Tsongkhapa gives his detailed commentary on the need for both analytical and placement meditation.
나는 지금 세디 저기다 람림 날야 아니 지게 기회신요 검소다 대주된 조금 바치면 따보 공부하기 당은 지금 세대 간에시 무슨 그래 조금 세대 간에시 세대다 되네 이제 쉬어쉬어나 신진에 저게 기회신인데 조금 야단 대주 내가 공부야 치워면 따보 공부 레제 삼보 공부야 아니 코리님이 섬야 장주 셈 공부야 되게 차상 도시네 제공 고고를 했을 때야 제바치는 공 고고를 했습니다. 제공 고고를 했어요.
Where we came up to this morning, so the top of page 63 on the handout, and at the top of page 55 in the published book, is where Lama Tsongkhapa was said explicitly that topics such as how to rely on the spiritual teacher, precious human rebirth, impermanence of this life, cause and effect, the faults of samsara and bodhicitta. These are illustrations where one needs to engage with analytical meditation.
나 지금 대소 냠는 제발라 지금 민지미 지금 제고고에서 오다게 외신인데서 공부합라 냐를 지금 제고고에서 하다 디나신다 지금이다 공부 지금 고고에서 했마다 그런 지금이 인다 많이 시험 지금 고고에서 송도 지금 그래서 고고에서 해지 근데 그 받듯이 쇼강도 외신인 대소 값이바 외신인데서 공부해라 공부해야 가르스네 외신인 라말야 대바 공부하다 근데 그거 공부해드려서 디 곰발라 녀래야 제바시네 라미 구송 투송 연된 가르가르 연될 바 제바제 연된데 통여도 연데 되네 통비게 델라비비 대바지야 고미야다 되네 아직 소술려 진체와인바 그린침바 삼다 김전 삼다 제바제 되네 아니 김전되게 하고 하고여도 아니 그거 고미야 도시는 아주 제바제 고레스 자세 두송거로 와다.
Where we came up to was ending with the words is necessary, and that can be expressed even more forcefully in that one must rely on analytical meditation on these topics. Then I gave the illustration in relation to the one meditation topic that has been presented in detail, that on relying on the spiritual teacher, which has the two components that one needs to generate in one's mind in that practice. Firstly, a faith or trust in the teacher, and secondly, a deep respect for him. So to generate faith and respect in a way that is deep, powerful, and transformative, it comes about independent on relying on analysis or investigating various good qualities of the teacher. So analyzing the qualities of the teacher in terms of his physical conduct, his teachings, and his mental qualities. And analyzing those, a deep and an abiding faith or certainty in the good qualities of one's teacher will arise. And so too with the second aspect, where one strives to generate a deep respect. This comes about through recalling and analyzing not merely recalling, but actually analyzing the kindness of the teacher. And so in dependence on this process of analysis, of deep contemplation, one will give rise to respect for the teacher. So in this way, one meditates on relying on a spiritual teacher through utilizing analysis, and this is indispensable.
Tadine, Dajuki, Atisha, Dajuki, Lutin. That Daju doing Chavata, Daju Nyakawa in body, that's him in Eba Nebala, the Hanja Jogum Jogores, at Simming Eba Nebala, that Daju doing Chimburimbata, Daju Nyakawa in body, Simming Eba Net, Redo, something Eba Nebala, and that was Java Jogores, or that is a Daju doing Java, the Nyakawa. The other Daju Lutin said, then Gansi Legres and Tawa Jeta Jo, Jusawa said the Shiguro, that the Anzuki, top Gavares, Gavi, Gimzen Garelana, the Gu Surim Namataba, Sonya Dang, the name Kausur Jimbala Sopake, and Georgia, the name Molan Mami Piki, Molam Tabja, some Jawas, Kugores, the Gimzen Chasa, the name of Kugores, Jabaja, Hako Yodu, Hakoadi, Hako, the Hakoala, the Sukimzen, some time, Jabachin Mada, some Yane, and some time. Some mother to go to marriages and didn't double two right in the Lamets in big then tribute and so some down in the Niggy Jabajedu, that you think Yakawa, that then you can believe Rimboche, she was in Yakawa Redo, only and then the Redo as I'm picking ever yet you more. Or Dinajida, that you doing Chimbo, that you Milu Rimboche told the doing Chivi, Gimjakares and that, and the Jabache. Then you Milu Rimboche Toban, the Dindela, and the church go up the Riobadan, and Jingyam Karachevin, Dindelia, Susan Yamne to Yoba, the Netarbata Tamji Gimbochas go on to Yoba, Rangi on it. The Shanley Pemba to Ludin D Tone, Shanley Pemba Yachimo to Yoba Yuza, that then you Milu Rimbo said, Bear must say, Yachimo Dunda Temper Resha, the Carson, then you Milu Rimbo Topna, deal at dinner, Rangi, Gawa bottom about Satu, Tabata Tamji Gimbo top to what Yamachi, Milu to be Kuchazan to do. The Rangi did don't do Madi, Shanley Pemba Yachu to do. She's a Ludin Dinish Mevan, Shanley Pemba to some Rangi, Yamne Yakuchi, and Gawa to some Dinesa, doing Masi Dondachimo to Resha, some big. The Niki Jebaji Shimichi, then Jogi, Ludin de Benya Gawa Resha, Daniena, Dondachimo to 20 Resha, some big, never knew the Niki Jebaji never Yaku, similar Yuachi, Daddy. Bemasi Geshe Marisha, the big you are down to word, did you are Nawala, the Nijabachi or SS. This and this chair, the Jehom Chair became zero in the Redwa.
The one primary, one meditation topic that has been covered in detail is that of relying on the spiritual teacher. The very next one that's presented is that of looking at this precious human rebirth that we've achieved. And as Lama Tsongkhapa says here at the top of page 55 or 63, is that one needs to utilize analysis to recognize the preciousness. The preciousness is in a correct translation. It should be the great purpose or the great importance of the freedoms and endowments and how difficult it is to find them. So to really drive home this point of that it is indispensable to engage in analysis, I'll talk briefly then about the meditation one does on the precious human rebirth, which is where one reflects on the 18 qualities of both freedoms and endowments, the 8 freedoms, the 10 endowments, that when all attained, a rebirth, a human rebirth, is precious. And so one would reflect on whether one has these and the great importance of having all 18, which is our case. But one doesn't merely just reflect, go through the list and say, yes, I've achieved all of these, therefore I have a precious human rebirth. That doesn't lead to a transformation of mind. One also needs to reflect on how difficult it was to attain. And one does so by reflecting on the causes, primarily excellent ethical restraint, as well as generosity, patience, and prayer. So here one needs to reflect on those causes, recognizing how rare it is for someone to accumulate such causes. And therefore, what we have achieved is of great value. Moreover, one reflects on what can be achieved with this life, why it is suitable to be called precious. And that is, we can cultivate the Dharma within. And we can cultivate the Dharma within to the level where our mind is radically transformed, and thereby transforming the continuity of lives that lie ahead of us. That is possible, but not for anyone, just those who have attained a precious human rebirth. Moreover, by radically changing one's own life, one has an outsized impact on others too. The way we interact with others also becomes of great benefit too. So reflecting like this, repeatedly over a sustained period, using reasons, leads not just to a mere recognition that the rebirth I've attained fulfills the description of a precious human rebirth, but it leads to truly valuing this opportunity and the determination not to let it go to waste. But this transformation of mind, this transformation of our way of thinking, of our values, of what we prioritize, it only comes about in dependence on repeated analytical meditation over a sustained period. And this then is the meaning of Lama Tsongkhapa saying that analytical meditation is necessary.
아디나신다 도시 디나신다 저기 데니기 르 뉴버시 템발라 제공 제고레스 디나제자 치워미다 봤습니다. 내가 저기다 지기 데니기 르딘디 denjulin mochi de duen nie gaware jesanda topna duena chembo shu tuke reja sabe ngeba sin yen du ngeba ni ngeba jeba je da dene ya ji dene ki dendi da an da ba tembu ge di be dugri be la na yang ji jeba chi du ada gyudan jian la dene ba ji di zhong de gyudan jian la dene zhong de ya ji ma gyudan jian ne ba chi che na ma ji ji cho cho shi cho cho re sabe ya tembu sky me no simbe da do shen ya ji me ngan zu gi lu den di den 개발 전이야 아니 그 지금 금세 삼다 될야 치위 기인데 먹고 쉬어야 해서다 다 기인 가려서네 아 저기 지난해 내 나자 칼라사다 마리비도네 시와용 그래 안지 추지 중화 추비 경기 안에 거샤 디긴 양저 치줘야 용 그래 안디 멤비게 양 천차다 되네 마트 온게 치줘야 용 그래 제가도 진짜 치얘기 기인데 먹고 쉬어도 돼서 되네서 ane denigi mena yang kanzu kin gama tewana korom chin kin ame kin ma sondi ko ba ganzam chile lo gyalhasle du ko ma shidya du ma shidya chagore chesan chiwa me da ba do asembe du chi da da ba timbu me ba gidin na du chi ji cho yo ba da denigi mi denju ludin de za chimbo toba ina yang 겐나 규나 겐 샤라 되네 바 시루고요 바 매바 차루고요 바데 바 심주지 제바 제도 김제 망부 섬도 어디 시슈지 레도아 선배기 지원메다 다 대안에 게디 시기를람나 근데 게디 신 해봐 매바데 다다 겐지 게디 채하고요 말아봐다 겐지 채서나 게디 채하 먹어봐서 시에 대한 게디 신 해봐요 말에 그래서 두시네 다 셈리아 되네게 해봐 땜부신 예알이야 되네게 기행 방법 삼다 김제 방법 삼다제 다들 되네게 아니 다 냄시세 된 치워 내봐 게디체 내봐 매봐 세디 두시나 어디 레도아 선비 삼다 내봐 띵니지 내봐라 아니 김제 삼다 제바 지고래 해서
After the next presentation, the next chapter, that on the precious human rebirth, that is followed then by the third major meditation, which is on the impermanence of this life. So by the time one gets to that part of the text, you should have reflected well on this precious life that one has, truly coming to value its great potential. Valuing its great potential, we now then progress the meditation to come to truly recognize that this life is impermanent. This life is not everlasting, but it will come to an end. And a lot of what is presented in this, as in other chapters, makes sense. It's easy to understand. But merely understanding something doesn't lead to a transformation. For a transformation to come, one needs to utilize many reasons, many logical reasons, to analyze a topic, and do so repeatedly over a sustained period. Then our way of thinking will radically change. So when we hear that we will all die, this life is not everlasting, this we recognize. But merely recognizing that doesn't lead to any change. Rather, we need to recognize why this life will come to an end. And that's because it's impermanent. And it's impermanent because it came about in dependence on causes. Therefore, when those causes that led to this life are exhausted, that this life will end. And those causes were already reflected on before in the context of the precious human rebirth. So we know those causes are what led to this life. And when their potency or their potential is exhausted, then this life will end. But not only is that one potential reason for our life ending, there are so many more. People die from an allergic reaction to what they eat or choking on what they eat. They can die from what they drink. They can die from traveling from here to there. People can die due to violence. There are so many reasons. Also, the constituents of our body can go out of balance, and illness will follow. Perhaps illness that's severe enough to kill, or illness that's severe enough to greatly impede us. All of this can happen. So by reflecting on this again and again, we're using various reasons, and it gives us a deep understanding that this life not only will end, but it can at any time and for any number of reasons. And moreover, one reflects that all the famous people in this world have come and gone. And even today, with excellent medical care, not many live much beyond 100, if they live that long. But whatever age they are, death will come. So reflecting in this way, utilizing reasons, one will come to recognize death is certain, but the time and the manner is uncertain. And this then will lead to us challenging this wrong notion that guides us, which is that we have extensive time. And you'll recognize that we really have no idea how much time remains.
Tempura Kevala, Lendelia, Jebache, Jehom Jehora, which is not done to Shina, and the Garzorge, Meva Chagrives, and the Meva Chagmares, Shinana, Chikewachima, and a Halakera, Miliki or Chikirures. That's in the Nyawada, either the Tundroda, Lada, Mised, Kirures. That the Gawa the Kaneski Ores, Janji, Yukarago, Halakin, and Yukagore, Milikin, and Yukaragore, Chinyawada, either like the Yukarakigores. Dusha Samta dus Jedu, Sisnada, Tebache, Tebig, Dona Samuel, the Tebigida, Sungnalia, Sangeta, Jik Sungnalia, and Jik Tipaku, Tipachebaina, and then Yavada Dundula Kiri Sada, Mason Kiri Sada, Kawachebaina, and Denigi, Lada Muko, Togresi, Sung Desola, Tebache, Tebi, Dundelia, Yana, some Dadu, Gumse, some Dadus, and Shimjuche, Ganzachilia, Downe, Lay, Gundre, then do, Stale, and Gudi Savajil, David Dijuya, then the Redua, Sempeda, Semlia, Miavania, Chikidu, Legelia, Le Jevu, Leda, Gudan, Jebuki, Jawada, that Sebuch Hago, right? She's not the Hagovala. And Dambo and Jiggy Delia, she Samta Jeva Tebache, Tubi Dundelia, Gimza Samta Jebache or Yes, she's not the Nick Jebache do, and the lady said, Jimmy Lord, Monera Redua, Sempegita, each Jebatiki, is your.
Having then gained certainty of our death, the thought will then come, and what happens after that? There we again use reasons to establish that at the time of death, our consciousness continues, our continuum will continue into a new life. Just like in lives previous to this, we accumulated causes that led to this rebirth, so too will this consciousness that traveled from past lives to this travel to future lives. And where can one take rebirth? Perhaps again as a human, perhaps as an animal. And why would one take rebirth in one or other realm? There we rely on the Buddha's presentation, where the Buddha clearly presented that the reason for a particular rebirth is karma. It's the particular causes that have an associated result. So if those causes are virtuous, it will lead to a desired, a wanted, a pleasant result of rebirth in the higher realms as a human or God. Or those causes that ripen at death are non-virtuous, it will lead to rebirth in the suffering lower realms, such as an animal or hell being or spirit. With this understanding then, one becomes ever more interested in the presentation on karma, on cause and effect. And one studies this well, reflecting on it. And as one comes to gain a deep understanding through utilizing reasonings, it leads to a determination to abandon all non-virtuous causes because of not wanting the suffering results, and to strive to accumulate virtuous causes because of the desired results. Again, this way of thinking comes about independent on hearing or studying, and then reflecting, analyzing, investigating repeatedly over a sustained period.
다 코와세데 예미균 제샤 다 코와딜레 마탄데 탑 미누 세베 하고 와라야 양 코위게 코와디 예미 바디 균인 바다 하고 와라야 김제 몽보 삼다 제바치네 두신의 삼다 하고 그걸마도 데네게 김세나 제게 제바치네 마제바이나 코와디 균인 바다 하고 마토지 마토바리 거의 균인 바하 마고 마토나 코와레 탈되게 삼바디 슈치모 기투고마 디메나 탈바도니 루기투고 말해지 디네 인자다 코위기 예미기 바딩 저기 아니 코와세도 균다 예미레도 삼비게 내바팀 부지게 발라 다모 코와리야 아니 코와세도 규가릴리티니 용어래 기행간에 지금 거래 대대 코와레니 그 직대와 디기 가를 동아강아 가를 용구도 집에 두시네 코위기 야 델리아 제바지 심유 제인들 다 코와디 예미 동아다 라시림바 델레데 마타나 탐미노신 비 코위기 코와디 균인 바데 내바팀 부지게 투그리 해서 그러다.
These three meditation topics, that on the precious human rebirth, the impermanence of this life, and karma, are included within the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of initial capacity. Thereafter, independence on having meditated well on these topics so they've had a deep impact on one's mind, one then reflects on the sufferings of samsara, or the faults of samsara, coming to really, again, using reasoning to recognize how suffering is pervasive for beings who are bound in samsara. And this is important to engage in this meditation with analysis, with reasons. Otherwise, one will not be convinced that there is nothing that is worthy of striving for, that is to be found within samsara, because there's no lasting happiness that can be found anywhere. This has to be recognized. And the only way one can recognize that is through using reasons and engaging in analysis. So, for example, one would look at the various rebirths within samsara as well as experiences within them, and come to see that these don't just come about. They come about independent on causes. So if this one is being built on one's prior meditation on cause and effect, and in the meditations prior to that, such as impermanence of life and precious human rebirth, one was also looking at causes and effects, the causes of attaining a precious rebirth. So here now, one builds on those prior meditations. They're not separate, they remain linked, gaining an even stronger determination to abandon all causes that will lead to suffering, and only accumulate causes that will lead to lasting happiness.
나는 나랑 저기 제금 라이도 치와 미다바 임비 김선 삼대 치와 세딩아 치조그레 치조비 김선 가레 된데 레도 와서 비 김선 삼다 제바지 비 로코로 다 곰세월 곰레서 로코로 곰레서 디나신 레균제 세야데 제부 규데네신 제부 되는 슝거레 규데네신 제부 되는 슝거 제사 다 두신에 제부 le gyukarza sawa debu kanes chungore dende chinde diba jebane de debu dunga yungor digi ni kewa chubane dewa debu digi dewa chungor wa cheza 저기 미고 방 토야려야 규데니 사고 해고 방 규데니 사고도 규데니 사바나 debu 냐와 교도 dunga 되는 용어도 배 데네기 제바친 데니 제바집으로 호로 다 데네 삼단디로디 제홈차고 와 제홈체 데네 삼단이다 타말이야 레균제 스탠딩 두 선배 삼로 디안 제홈차고 와다 진짜 치와 미다바도 제 심주진다 미다바서 치를 내가 타쳐버려서 그 징에면 레도 와서 베게 타주불려디야 제금 차로 받아 되니게 딱 구스네 고 제바진들 고 제바진도 진다 로디라 제홈서 디차사다 되니게 삼다데 삼다위게 로디게 차사 제금 레세고다 제금.
These are illustrations of analytical meditation, because one is engaging in meditating, so the mind is engaging in meditation, but it is specifically the type of meditation that's using analysis or investigation, utilizing reasons. So again, with this final example of looking at the sufferings of samsara, one is calling to mind the various illustrations of suffering, recognizing that beings do experience these, and they do so independent on causes. An experience of suffering is a result that has come about independent on causes. So one is investigating the results and the respective causes, so as to give rise to a determination to abandon such causes. Similarly, one recognizes that the causes that will lead to our ongoing spiritual development and our progression to a state of lasting happiness. And through analysis, we'll continue to gain even a more certain knowledge, or a certain conviction that those are the causes to strive to cultivate. So this whole process is a process of analytical meditation.
samdaya janjusem gebala je gebaro je samloji mangbo stanje jeni ma do nya janjusem di jege denegi jeba je sammata ba ji thwe ngo marwa za deni za da janjusem se di angane chire janjusem gebala ane gyugar kar sa go re da bo nye le ya kar ko hom se de nga je janjusem tribu gyu ge ya ane nyune ma nga du se da da shan nyam je ije du su de gong gu do deni je da shan nyam je gom je deni de na janjusem ge tu do 나 양지 군대 맹아 둔교구도 공부하는 자신심 기토도 사 자신심살 지난 자신심디 개발라 유 곰 데데데데 이제 얼마도 디마제바 기토야민도와 데네제나 자신심데디 냐바디 기토구도 와선베게 안 자신심세데 뭐 그런 간에서는 샘자 탐제교도나 산적고방 토비 칠 토벌 쇼스베 삼로디 자신심레 니개발라 유데데데 공부고에서디 데네게 삼다 노치네 제바진다 디니게 제발을 때네 기연도 다시 심자도 산유고만 토벌쇼 선배 전유심들이 레도와 선배 내바 전유심세디 내바 뭐 되는 시에도와 디게발라 곰 되는 제고도와 선배게다 전유심 기에 탑람 되는 레도와 선배 두삼단의 제바진행 저기 제바제제 다시 심자 탐시 산유고만 토벌쇼 선배 삼로디 기에나 군론 디메나 아니 산유고만 톱투입니다 인지미지 디고도와 파신 중에 냠네 제발라 디고도 군론디 인지미지 고도 선배게 다 내바도 내바 끼어도 다 되네게 제바 제기로 되라 다 전주sem나 전주sem 다 가서 제공시오라 제공
With the meditation on bodhicitta, here too one needs to engage in analytical meditation, and in fact, without engaging in extensive analytical meditation, bodhicitta cannot be generated. Bodhicitta is so much more than merely having a wish for others to be free of suffering. It's a determination to attain Buddhahood oneself in order to be able to lead all beings to the state of to a state freed of suffering. So to be able to generate this determination requires extensive knowledge and integration of that knowledge through analytical meditation. One needs to know what is Buddhahood. One needs to know the Buddhahood that one wants to achieve, and one needs to know how it can be achieved so that it's possible, and one needs to know what is the state freed of suffering that you want to lead others to. All of that needs to have already been reflected on. And then merely knowing that is insufficient. One needs to know what are the causes that lead to Buddhahood, lead to Buddhahood. So the primary cause, we would say, is bodhicitta, but to generate bodhicitta requires its own causes. And there one needs to know the two methods, either equalizing and exchanging self with others, or the 6 cause and 1 effect method. So one needs to know these. And then from knowing the causes, through engaging in meditating on them analytically, have the confidence that by cultivating these, the desired result of bodhicitta will be attained. And by generating bodhicitta and its associated practices of the bodhisattva, can its result of Buddhahood be achieved. So here too with bodhicitta, we recognize the need for analytical meditation, consistent, deep analytical meditation, and how this meditation is linked to the prior meditations, because only independence on the successful cultivation of the prior meditations can the latter meditations be generated. And these too are all illustrations of analytical meditation.
Ina shinda denga zo tongpa yin le ina kansa ta chi da kansa ta me se da tongpa yin se da kansa ta me ra ba da chamo da tongpa yin se jo ro de so ya dang bo ne be den kansa ta me ro shin ne ra ba di ge ne be ne nga zo dang bo ma do kha la ne ge be shin yin zhen de di de tue ba jie tue be de de le ya ne yang do du xie kansa ta me de gan de se de du xie xim ju ya ne yang do jie ba qie lu kansa zhe le o da kansa ta me de se xia se be nge ba nie ji mu ro wa Dina xin dongpa yin dangpo tue dongpa yin ko tue bege duan de le yang ne yang do yang ne no sam da ne an de dongpa se di o de ni chi re do a se be nge ba ni de nie di di zhe san ji hom cha guo da ni ji hom cha guo le.
And so too with the topics of selflessness or emptiness. Here one also needs to hear and study, and whilst engaging in this process of hearing and studying, reflect, meditate, using reasons, coming to understand the coarse as well as the subtler presentations of selflessness and emptiness, and then reflecting on them deeply, utilizing the techniques of reasoning that are presented. This is the method by which one will come to realize emptiness. And this too is an illustration of analytical meditation.
Dine zanda, dine chegong gozo, didar san, dine ki chego, didar deda la nis, lo shu zha la, gun rin wa, yi ku nuba chik, nuba ri go des. Deda, di me na, deda ki dok shok, ma gu ba sok, gong mi nubi chiris, chiridang sa.
So let's then return to the text where we concluded this morning. Each of them requires an awareness that has great strength and the ability to subdue the mind for a long time, because if those are absent, their counterparts, disrespect and the like, cannot be prevented.
Di gare lamna deda la kasori lo nu lo shu zhagbo yun ma cheba yi ku wa re go re se benanga juge jige deji sheba na shinda de delia Gewe Xinyan Gomba Tang, Doshu Milurima Gomba, and the Jigge, Chiwa Metaba Gomba, Lede Gomba, Kogi, Nimi, Samba, Chanshu, Sam Gomba, said the Niki, Gom Delia, Kogi, Nimi, Samba, the Koala, Kunchi, Redo, Sambig Lo, Shu Drabo Jigda, and there Mutuchi Uni would never coordinates, Tizan Uni never, and Delia, and Yukua said, You draw to watch coordinates. The Jing on the Lo. Jige Kogi Yemele Gyunru Tona, the Rashuk Shirai made again, and the de Samdona and Yedin Jella Majanga Yungurwa, Jizan Denigi, Mebaja Koval Gyunhu, Lud Bej, Shuk Tahochi, that be Shuk Shambuchi, and there Yunibu, and then Yunibu, the Dust in the Yedo, my Yunibu. The Gombalet and the Yikuas, the Yudu, Koval, the Gyunisha, the need. Gyundile, Tarmatan, Tabminus and Big, Tarwots and Big, go ye, Yodo, draw to watch Gogores. Jezan Denigi, draw to watch Gogores, and Jezan Koyu Gyun, some Damena, Koyu Gyun, Yimikom, some Damena, Jezan Koyu Gyun, there's Tonga, some Yugo Mares, Lamzan, Lodi, shoot Jawaki Gores, shoot Jawaki and Yunduman and Pingo Mother, Yundu Gores, Yundu Digi, look, you are Gores. You are your Georgia, that delay target somebody to you, just your Gores, just a dinner Yoala, and the Jehom Gores or that Dinish Gores or.
For the meditations on the topics just presented, such as relying on a spiritual teacher, precious human rebirth, impermanence of life, cause and effect, sufferings of samsara and bodhicitta, for the meditations on any and all of these topics, to be able to actually transform the mind, 3 components are required. And these are mentioned here. So the way it's translated, they seem together, but they are 3 individual components. So the first is, the meditation needs to be of great strength. Secondly, the meditation needs to be for an extensive period of time, so of great length, I think it says, for a long period. And then thirdly, it must have the ability to subdue the mind. So it needs to have great strength, it must be for an extensive period, and thereby the mind will be subdued. And in addition, the mind will be subdued. So there's 3 components. This is how, for one's meditations, to be able to have a deep and meaningful impact, this is how the meditation needs to be, this analytical meditation. The mind needs to be strong. It needs to be sustained on the topic, say the sufferings of samsara, for an extensive period of time, and must have the impact to subdue the mind.
Nyan so da minwa da tejik jeho da sambigan shu jawo gabre le shoro ine antes maden yeruwa chesa di tembu ya mare shu jawo tembu me bare chesa deus chine che shu jawo da tembu da denige shu jawo tembu yo de lo di yuwa china da mi da bar chesa da tendele ya chi nyamne chen dig minu sam nyamne den jeho do sambi dumba jawo le yuwa jo tu go di dene yo ya la chiwa mi da ba den je di mi da ba 또 삼노다 로디 슈 잡어치다 대한 템부시 안디 때는 안 지금 개회 자원 주피에게 규바다에 삼을 봐라 지원미다 봐서 제바지 야네야도 제바지 삼다베나 고 금체 야야 통로도 되니 고 셈디 공바시가 제고물데 제바지 야네야도 삼다에도 제바지 제비 로디파 오 통위로 제바지네 다디 모이 통위로디 곰도라 그 지바샤 지조로와 제가 곰제 곰서 제 야네 삼다도 나 삼로디 뉴발마서 슉충 셔셔 곰바디 제바제 로디 뉴르 곰바디 슉셔셔 디 곰비 슉쳔비 슉셔셔 로이도 제자다 로디 야기루와 제가 제 곰서든 제바라 데네 로디 뉴슈르 마서나 슉자자치 뉴바셔셔 로디 제 곰시고로와다.
So of these various meditations, let's talk a little about the impermanence of life meditation. So this has the components of recognizing the certainty of death, the uncertainty of the time and manner of death, and that the only thing that will help at the time of death is the virtue we've accumulated through Dharma practice over our life. So reading this, or hearing it in a teaching, or meditating on it briefly, will have some impact on one's mind. But it's not likely to radically change how you live from that moment on. So why is that? Well, these 3 components are missing. If one hears the teaching, one may give rise to inspiration within. The teaching may lead to one being inspired to radically transform how one lives one's life. But then one leaves here, and immediately one falls back into habitual tendencies, living one's life no different from before. So what's happening is that the strength of the mind that arose faded away. It was not sustained. And moreover, it didn't subdue the mind. It didn't subdue the mind in terms of overcoming the habitual tendencies. So what is required is to repeat the process again and again. And one does this in one's daily meditations. And one does this, secondly, by reminding oneself of what one meditated on earlier throughout the day. One engages in the meditation using reasons, reminding ourselves again and again that death is certain for these reasons, and that the time and manner of my death is unknown, and it could be soon for these and these reasons. And at the time of death, all that will matter is the good karma, the virtuous imprints that I've accumulated. So therefore, I must strive to accumulate the Dharma within my mind. And we need to do that with reasons repeatedly. And as we do so, as we engage in this analytical meditation ever more over a sustained period, the determination to utilize this life well will arise more easily, and it will have a greater impact on us. So there's the strength. It will abide within us in the meditation, and later after the meditation too, for longer periods. And it will subdue our mind in the sense of when one is drawn into one's unhelpful habitual tendencies, it'll be easier to turn away from them. And when this happens, the skilled meditator will recognize this and will use that as inspiration to continue in their meditation on the impermanence of this life, knowing or seeing that the results of repeated meditation, repeated analytical meditation, and therefore now is the time to continue this process so that the strength of mind, the duration, and the subduing of habitual tendencies grows ever stronger within. This all comes about in dependence on analytical meditation, using wide number of reasons and doing so over an extensive period of time.
Temena dedagi docho maguba so go minibi chirs. Jisan temena sedu bene lo shu cha la ane gyun wa ane yi kuwa chi metumna mebaina majumbaina ane maguba so do ni marese. Tadi chinga zo kiwi shin den su de lo kombane kiwi shin la deba ta ane kuba de be shu cha bo chi ta ane gyun wa di degu di du yi ku yi di yuwa zhuo tu bachi, da yuwa zhuo ne degui jie de, dene shu zhabo da, ane degui yun ringbo jie de, yuwa zhe de, da la me gai xin de zhugin sanpe ge nyamlen jigin sanpe yuwa zhuo tu bachi gogo res. Di me bayi na, dene ge ma jie bayi na, ane docho ma gu ba di, lama la ma gu ba da, ane jik ma gu ba di ge ga tu kuma res, deos si de ba jie, gu ba deos ke bayi na, yin yu ma ne na, jie liya ya ma gu ba jie ki jing. Kian de Maguba Yang Yores. Dina Shin that in Masokna, Chasan Chagurua, Dina Shin that Dajuku doing Chavata, and the Yakawatiki, Yani and the Jevachita, the Niki Yakawat, then the Redua, Sembigi, doing Chava, then the Redua, Sembulo, the Kiava, shoot Chapachita, the Uniwinevach Kugures. Says that them, Dini Major Dush, some other doing Chimbore, Sembes, Hagoat, some Chigi, shoot a woman, and di dokcho ane jige deme samdaya dige letu katu mare se urtanga jige nyakawa da dine chiwa medaba chasangi da chiwa medaba di samda di lo shu jaba da an jikuso muti ne gyunyo jmeba ina di dokcho da ngashi mare se me taksen dige dotu mare se di dokcho dige sokna ya da maguba sokse de dokcho ane shinye la maguba da nichi chiwa meda ba taba zimlo da lede la yomare sembeke lede da yichime yima chebe samlo dige ane kowali kowi gyun ma da kowi yenden thone ge samlo dige ga tu mare so re.
The second half of that sentence, because if those are absent, their counterparts, disrespect and the like, cannot be prevented. So this then goes back to the prior chapter, the first main meditation topic in the text, that of relying on the spiritual teacher. The purpose of that meditation is to generate faith or trust, as well as deep respect in one's spiritual teacher. That can only come about through repeated and sustained meditation, analytical meditation using reasons, until it arises in a manner that is stable and the mind is transformed. When that happens, the desired result of that meditation is attained, which is all the teachings you then receive from your teacher, you'll very easily be able to apply yourself to cultivating them within, because of your deep faith and respect in the teacher. But if that meditation has not been done successfully, Then, when one does sporadically do the meditation, or when one recalls one's teacher, there'll be some emotional impact, but it'll quickly fade away. And one's prior habitual tendencies, for example, criticizing and so forth, will just naturally arise. In other words, there won't be much in terms of change. And so too, with the next topic, the one in the chapter hereafter, that of the precious human rebirth. If one merely hears the teaching, comes to an intellectual understanding, recognizing that rebirth having these 18 qualities, these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, is difficult to obtain and has great value, but that's all that comes, this intellectual understanding, one will continue to take for granted what one has achieved with such hard work in lives prior to this. And one will not make the most of this opportunity. So here too, one will not progress in that one's old habitual tendencies of taking this life for granted will continue. And likewise with the meditation on the impermanence of this life, if one doesn't continue with analytical meditation repeatedly over a sustained period, one will not achieve the desired result. One will continue to grasp at this life as if it were everlasting, believing that we all have this period of time before us, although that cannot be based on valid logical reasoning. So too with cause and effects and sufferings of samsara. Unless one meditates on each of these topics sequentially, in detail, over a sustained period, utilizing reasons in this analytical meditation, one will continue to take pleasure in the delights of samsara, not recognizing how we are deluding ourselves or strengthening our delusions, rather than cultivating wisdom and striving for freedom from the sufferings of samsara. Lama Tsongkhapa continues in the next sentence. Also, the generation of such an awareness depends on nothing but the meditation repeatedly analyzing through fine investigation.
gom konala rali gresi denigi jeba jene gomba ina andi allo shu chabo da junyewa yi kuwa de yong tugure ma do denigi ane an su tu be ma gomba ina ani shu chabo yung ma shu chabo da na ani junjingbo da ani yi kuwa de tu ma res chizan denigi yong ya de rali aba so so to be jeba je yane yang do je yane yang samda gomba de la rali gores kola konala rali sen denigi 제나 용구를 맞지 맞에는 용구 말이죠. 코나라라 레바레스. 제바치 흘러들어와 디단 디말에 제바치 흘러들어와.
Just to read the sentence again. Also, the generation of such an awareness depends on nothing but the meditation repeatedly analyzing through fine investigation. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here is that it's only through meditating repeatedly with analysis or fine investigation, so only through repeatedly engaging in analytical meditation will one give rise to such an awareness, referring to the mind in relation to the topic having great strength, that mind of great strength abiding for a long time, and that mind of great strength that's abiding for a long time, being able to subdue previous harmful habitual tendencies. Those three aspects only come about through engaging in analytical meditation repeatedly over a sustained period.
도시나 저기 제바체 안에 안도 제바주 김전 삼다 combatile, that Jehom Resajua. And Duslamna, that is Jehomina, then Anzuki, Semjen Rojik, Chamboros, Nyaro, Chambor Jew, and that's something yet, can Jew or a can sew or a cook and cigarettes, Javache, or that Javachi to Ganzum Julia, Jumter, some doubt, or Dennis Jew, the Colia, and the Suelia, and Julia, and the court Jacques mother, Dennis Ku, the Menoco Jew to Summer, Javachine, got Jew to a Juegi, Nyadi, Semjon, Soldier, Jag, Tondalia, Canesso, who do Canesso, and so to Ado, Servale, or a Chagan Caragal goods, Dennis sometimes, or sometimes Javache, or that Dennis who do Dennis and Cosso to Saras and begin touch with some Jorva. Di sometimes the Geomria, that the Jewish Lira, that the Geom Reves, Semjon Soldier, Geom Chia, Yorves, and Jewish Tana, and Galas.
What we've heard then about analytical meditation is a process of analysis where one thinks through a particular situation, coming to understand it particularly well so as to have a transformative impact on our mind. And this is a skill, as mentioned, that we utilize in many aspects of our life. But not all aspects of our life, although the process of thought would be the same, would not necessarily count as analytical meditation. For example, if you arrive at a beautiful lake and you see a sign showing the large fish that are in this lake, and you think to yourself, how can I catch a fish? What is a skillful means? And you watch what others are doing and you come up with a plan, and then you think, now I'm going to try and catch one of these fish. Well, you've gone through a process of analysis, but this is not what is being referred to here.
Ma Jabla, Ma give the Mawanji, Consular Mark, and this Jaro Tunja, and Stana Beju, Canistan, Consuma, May, Sutusa, Simju, Jabachin, Consancho, or that Tunja and Beju, and Titan, who the Bejitan, called the Denish door to Sir Denis, Meva Sutusa, and begin this some logic. The idea, the Gumzem over some down Javache, and the Tamala Dijana, Tikutin, Tauch, Ligorua, and the Son and Jehom Chagribe said that. And the men began, Sendik began that you didn't Pajava Chepa, you didn't Samolia Java Chigorua, Java Jehom Reves, and that and the Lagarchina Jehom Charu was big. Kalasena or Dennis Sadenes and the Simbuama, Dennis Mamoja, Numde said in Kalasonalia, Chimju Mangoja Java Jene, and the Kalasona, Desert Jehom Reves. Then the Garjeva and Jehom Charu was and began, and the Duara, some non in the Yungru.
When one thinks about this, doubts such as these should arise. For example, where there's warfare in the world, there'll be extensive planning and preparation done by military and political leaders, coming down to how best at the smallest cost to themselves can death be brought to their enemies. So here they're engaging in a process of analysis, but this is not what we're talking about. Likewise, scientists and whatever they're working on in the labs, or chefs, when they are putting together a new delicious dish. This is all involving processes of analysis, but it too is not what is being referred to here. So whilst those illustrations are illustrations of analysis, they would not be suitable to be called analytical meditation.
Givi Java di Tubia Dondala, some no Yuota Dondala Jumse some Tangomato, the Ras Donda di Ina Maina Sambegi, Java some Tango Marvatanzu, the Juniakawa, Twencha, some dating had you washed Tango, the teacher Lami Mania Tubi Cablia, the Twenchimboreta, Yakawareta, the nest some down, the nest some tower in it, and the some loya, Dustin, Givi Java to two recipe, the Nigi Tubache. Dini Tune, Odangadi, Givi Jawa Yamli, Jukudu, some Daje, Juku, Guno di Dikeche, and the Guno, Givi Jawa, Jukudu, Kewachimal, Hadamiko, Tokudu, Tarbada, Tarjiki, Tokudu, Sempiki, Guno, Dinis, some Daje, to get Dashuki, doing Choima, Jumza Samta, then the chicken, Yakawa, Jumza Samta, those to use Samta. Jumza Samta, Jumza, how go to deal the Yane, Yando, some Dutch, Gunishara, Gomba said that the Jebache, Jebachin, Yane, Yando, some Lotipa, Nushu, Daya, Cheratayada, Gomba, Trapoya, they are moody, Trapoyada, and the Lord Gurche, Dene Samta, the Lord Gurchen, then that in Yamlenchi, Gawa Tukudu, that in Tukudu, Sempike, some noche, Leabado, Lelebado, this combo. Dene Samta Gombuza, that Gom Sura, the cousin, Yane, Yando, Samta, Kivicha, some Uriag, Dandala, Muti, Gewachimal, Hada, Mukova, Toyada, Kovi, Kovale, Tarba, Tamji Kimbo, Toyagi, Di Dandala, and that is Jevachewa, Dunchavada, some diet, Dene Samta, these some died, the Nigi, Yane, Yando, some the Lodipa, Shukcherta, Nubachertaya, and Digi, Lodi, Nubacherta, Lodi, Nubacher. Rolla Dene, Dendeliang gave in Yamlanche, Jegins and became Yamlanche, Dumbati Shucher Joyag. The Denish young with a dela Jehom Simado, could Jeva Cheva Samla, and then some of the G said again, and the same Jack and the Susan, Jevas Jevas, a Koran Tupshit, Jeva Cheva Samado, Dilo de gave Java sometime, Tangomar, Yane Yasun, Gombe, Nuba Yurta, Cherta, some Tangoma. She's a Dineza, Jegom said the Kadis Kures and Din Hashim. Tangbo Tudi Gablia, Givi Jawa, Yamlen, Tarbata, Tamjekama, Gewachimal, Hada, Mukoba, Toyagi, Dini Togudu, Sempi Toku, Tobala, Yamlen, Dinis Yahu, Sempi Guno, Dinis Keje, and Didonala, Didon, Jebache, and some down. No combines at the Jehom series.
So, whilst reflecting on how to take life, or some kind of scientific analysis, or even cooking, is using using analysis and reasoning, and that is the same process as one utilizes, for example, when reflecting on how difficult it is to obtain these freedoms and endowments, and how rare they are. So whilst that process is the same, only that the meditation on the freedoms and endowments is a path towards accumulation of virtue. Whereas reflecting on how to take life, various kinds of scientific analysis and so forth, is analysis. It's not suitable to be called analytical meditation. So what makes a process of analysis suitable to be called analytical meditation is this. It starts with a process of hearing or study, so the gathering of information, which is then integrated through analysis, and it has as its objective a continuation of virtue, or it has as its objective the attainment of a particular goal, such as a further precious human rebirth, or liberation, or enlightenment. So when one is engaging in a topic of analytical meditation, such as on precious human rebirth, what will make this a meditation suitable to be called an analytical meditation is that the goal that one is striving for is a virtuous goal, and that not only is the goal virtuous, but that particular meditation leads to one developing an ever stronger determination to live this life in a meaningful way. So it's quite a different outcome from the general thinking people do in their life, the general analysis people do, thinking about what are the right ingredients to put together for a nice dish. It's analysis. One may be even planning an extensive meal and taking some time to do it. So extensive analysis. But one would not call that analytical meditation, because the goal is not one that is necessarily virtuous, one that is aiding one's spiritual development from life to life.
Chagyul dubige tsama drotane gomba mana ndesha chakpo jewadang. Drala yidu myowe tsama mangdu samna
Lama Tsongkhapa continues. For example, just as intense attachment arises when you closely familiarize yourself with an object of attachment, exaggerating its pleasant features, so intense hatred arises when you repeatedly think of the many unpleasant features of an enemy.
Delia Dubiki and the Tema Drotanes, that Delepe would dia would Denison Chipa and Dusin Mambura some Dabena and the Denigi Delia Yunden Denisi do Sempic Denit in the use of Samba Mangochi Pamena Denish do Sempic to Drot Mango Dabe Daniel Combine Mana and the Garsor Josia Shuta to restore Josia Shucher to go essay Shucher to us. Cheru was Dinashi, Sosola Magave, Sosola Mega Charge, Soso Nivigin Chibena, Delia, Chicuendo, Mangora, some Davena, Delia, Condomanga, Cheru to us, or that Jala Idumio, Sema, Mandos, Samna, Shedata, Washins, Chesa, Chabe Yula, and Chai Jumse Mambo Samdana, the Nigita, the Yagi, Pamena, Trota, the Didu, and Trotama, some Monkaze, Mata, Delia. Dambi Kingi, Chawa Shukcher Joyada, the Nigi, the Sosu Maga, the Gun Hosachi, and the Dela Gun Gazena Mangatas and Kolia Condoma Shukcher Yet Yungor Essage.
Here then, Lama Tsongkhapa is showing to us how strong attachment and hatred arise. So first, to take attachment, when there's something that attachment arises towards, very quickly, we exaggerate, amplify its desirable features. And those desirable features are what dominate us about what we are attached to. The less desirable features are completely ignored as if they didn't exist. But we just focus on the parts that we like, and therefore our attachment grows. Our mind becomes dominated, even obsessed with what we desire. And that same process is employed by the mind with what we dislike. So when a person whom we dislike comes to mind, they come to mind not with their good qualities, but only with their faults. And then our mind ruminates about their faults, and they become ever more unpleasant to us. Our wish to be separated from them grows ever more. In both cases, we relate to the object in a similar way, in that we exaggerate either the desirable or the unpleasant features so that they dominate our mind and we completely misconstrue what it is we are thinking about.
Dusineda Jumchen Roje, Chikmambo, some Davena, Joshana Shukshar, Korena Shukshar, Kigduas, Sungura, Dinashire, Danganzugi, the Sosogi, the Chike, just Mariwara Chick, Mariwara Chumena, Danganzugi, that chick, Shangi, Guen Rosa, Guen, some dad in March, Sosolia, Chikuen, some Chishan, some dad, Shandelia, Contra Shukchamuki. The Sosugan, I bet your Shangalia, Chisosu, Tigi Nugu, Tonchon, Tangson, Diana, Jumse Sosolia, Guenrush, Sosu, Pet, Yoimba, the Guin, but Mambo, Kaze, some Kaze Mahasan, the Dizzy Sosarangi, Manemia, Sosara, Jobochaya, then the same shoe, Casore, Imukia, and Gazabilla, or that, Made Derma, the Chimendo, Adisha, use and begin Sorjagi, Ningachimbo, which is a Denigi. Susuki, the Trota, Guin, Mango, Yana, Yan, sometimes, the Sosoya, and Nuad Yungo, which is a Dinigi, and sometimes you married water. Dinis had been Jayu Charlie, Yana, Yadu, Guin, Mangotan, Colia, country the shoe church, Mado, country Chaya, mother. Then you don't use Chawaki, usually, Delia, you ended Marmar, Kaza, sometimes, for Chawa shoe church, Mado, and Chapa Chundra, Mavares. Dinaja. 소소지게 교인 삼다 당이 너르시자 가지지 교르샤 가 너르 가지 민도 선백도 교인 망 양양 삼던데 되니기 남도 교인 망보 삼다데 소소베 통중 중중으로 삼다 소소 교보시 오시 삼다 나 되니 이무기야다 소소가 강화되죠 되니기 용거 제사디 야네야도 판도 매바디게 야네야도 삼다 이메일에서 다 당기가 말했어 단다라
Lama Tsongkhapa is introducing this here, so we can see how through utilizing reasons, so we see how in our everyday life we utilize reasons in terms of both attachment and anger, and how through using this reasoning, the way we relate to the object we desire or we dislike grows and grows in strength. So for example, when there's someone that you dislike, merely hearing their name leads to unpleasant thoughts about them arising, or hearing their voice, or just thinking of them, unpleasant thoughts arise. And what we tend to do is then grasp at those unpleasant thoughts, making them stronger, more powerful. And we think of very quickly a long list of terrible things that this person has done to us or those that we care for. And our dislike for them becomes ever stronger, deeper within us. And if we have the opportunity to talk about this person we dislike, we'll rattle off a long list of their faults and everything that makes them just an awful person. Part of the impact this also has on us, though, is that our mind becomes tight and we feel weak and helpless to deal with this situation. So all that's happening is our anger grows through focusing on the faults of those we dislike. It cannot weaken in this way, and we start to feel bad about ourselves and our situation. And this process is similar with attachment, where we exaggerate the qualities about something. We do not see it as it really is, but with all its desirable features so overblown, blown out of proportion, that the undesirable features are as if they were invisible to us. This way of thinking we can also relate to ourselves, seeing ourselves in a grossly distorted manner. I'm no good, I'm useless, this is beyond me. And like this, a depression can set in. So this way of thinking, from this, no benefit comes. It is far from relating to ourselves or others in a way that is in accordance with reality. And it only serves to strengthen harmful patterns.
디나데다 소소게 껬 다지 두스 껬다네 이무기그레세 디베지나한테 요 말에 다행히 데려가 셜 방에 시샤레 시고래 진짜 다데가스네 차베유라 야네 야노 섬드나 차고 슈치체르 디그레스 자유 초라 안껬 야네 섬드네 네 콘도 슈체르 디그레스 송도아 아 디나신당이 셜이야 안 소수기 껬인들에 야네 야도 껬인을 야네 야도 삼다네 소수기 껬인타에 삼로 슈샤샤게 되는 소소래 이모게 안장한 지게 빼 지기 냠모고 차다 나 되면도 민우선비게다 되니게 셈나 강아 먹고지 용고로 제산 되네 용고레스 제산 디삼다 메레스 되게 셜을 송고래 시게 제산다 되니게 소소야 껬인로지 통제 소수기다 되니게 삼로 코웨나 내려야 가서 삼로로지 디마게 돈다라야 삼로 가르당 고래서는 소수의 연된 초디 삼다지 소수의 연된 초디 삼다 엉에 되게 근데 교연세의 수강래 교연매한 점블이나래야 교연매한 수지요 말했어 그러다 교연한 교연 체중다 강아 체중 여 차상 여여 마도 나 지구라 여바 산다 매바 차상 미전다 차상 교연매바 연 강아 메된 대화 자야 말해 차상이야 네가 그래 대화 용어 갑데 동화 용어 차상을 여래스 메가 요말 노트 메가 메어 마르스베게 삼다 소소네 데니게 삼다 오당한 데니게 차사리에서 두신 삼다나 소수야 껬인데 삼로도 슈충줘야다 안디메 소수의 연된 초지 삼다 소수 오당이 데니지 샹리아 소수의 지기래가 야고제시에 먹고 여러와다 엉이 데네 샹리아 판도르 데네 판도르 디야도 띵아 야고제도와 마시우지 껬인데 두자 가면도와 데 야고제도와 삼백 두신 삼다는 소수의 poverty to say shadow. The nigga sometimes do so you get in Carso Sem Shumba, the Yimukti, Young Mares, just that the nigga sometimes the kitchen for it.
I want to be very clear. The text here only presents this process in terms of attachment and anger. It doesn't talk about depression. So this is something that I'm adding to the presentation. It's not found in the text. But the process of thinking is the same, in that with attachment, we exaggerate the qualities, and if that attachment is even slightly strong, we are, to a degree, obsessing with their desirable qualities. So too with anger. If we are even slightly staying with the perceived faults in something, we are obsessing with that to a degree, and we come to dislike something. In both of those instances, we are not relating to whatever it is that we like or dislike in a rounded manner, in a realistic manner. We're not seeing it for what it is, but we are seeing it through the lens of our exaggeration, as desirable or repellent. So too, if a result is that one suffers from depression, the way one relates to oneself is out of balance. The depressed person is seeing themselves in a way that they do not exist. They are seeing themselves in a way that no one else would agree with. So here, when the mind is more light and more flexible, to utilize those opportunities, to look at oneself in a realistic manner, remind oneself of one's good qualities, because everyone has them and everyone has an abundance of them. A mind of anger towards others, or a mind of depression towards oneself, is a mind that is focused just on faults and is ignoring the good qualities. Hence it's unbalanced. Moreover, again, when the mind's more relaxed and one can think clearly, one must also notice that in our world, everyone's got faults. There's nothing that is unique about oneself in terms of an abundance of them. Everyone has faults. Everyone has qualities, good qualities. And then when the mind is in this better state, do this meditation again and again so that one can have a more balanced approach to oneself or to what it is that one may be attached to or dislike. So that one can, when the emotion isn't strong within oneself, can train one's mind to relate to things in a more realistic manner, not exaggerating desirable features, not exaggerating undesirable features, but having a more equanimous, a more relaxed, a more realistic approach.
소소 당이 권인지스도 소소 라랑 개와 체델이나 저기 디기 셈기고야 다 개와 치마이나야 안디기다 타바다 탐지 캠표 고바 토에디 소소 라랑 개와 냠난 제 소소기 약고 제베는 소소기야 권차로 소소 약보여야게 약고 티가시차 소소랑에 권리에서 디 제베는 소소라 당이 권인지스도 소소 라랑기 삼라 약보다 두치네 안지 제베는 delena cedelena givu anesem cechimana thada migo to tarba tamji gigo to ba yongge ese digi tubtubure ese sosorarang samda da danyi go jayan insidu sosorarang ge samda ha norchene jipe dade jigyen je sosorarang ya jigyen da yi jitu chen semla ganga de cedelena sosor semma giwa ganga cheya andinige sosuge samda thone shanlia ajin 공로사다 되니기 디베 자와 제바이나 되니 제바이나 아니 개와 치마이나 마서 개와야데 강아 둥어 용어야데 지고를 소소 지고를 제사 소소랑 약보다 차다 누가시 야가 차를 누가 차다 소소라라 소소게 당연히 람이기 다 산지 람든 제셔바 나니 소소기도 제반에 소소 야고 차도 그래서 제상 소소 권례 소소소 권례 치겐 마소네 야 디길이야 치겐 이 치겐들이었어 지난다 소소게 소소 야고 마제바 있는 삼다나 마시 마지 디바다지 디니기 수견장야 삼다데 베나 안디게 소소라 마기바 차야다 소소가 손에 치주한데 소소라 치주가서 최고로 지사 당연하게 자 인스 소소라 강한 제겐 소소를 차려와 제사 디제 송고로 제사 디네자 소소라랑기 삼다죠 만나와제 야고제 이제 공부해야지 계신벌에서 송고로 와다.
Our founder teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, he said that we are all our own protectors. We are also all our own enemy. And the meaning of this is, or the first line, we are our own protectors, is we have the capacity to protect ourselves from suffering. We have the capacity to focus our mind on virtue, to focus our mind on these minds, virtuous minds of the Dharma, to cultivate these within us so we become ever more habituated to them. And in this way, we protect ourselves from suffering now, and through these causes we are creating, we protect ourselves from suffering in future lives too. Because by focusing our mind on the Dharma, on these various wholesome minds, and when we notice our mind swaying off, to bring it back, we are keeping our mind happy now, and we are creating the causes that will lead to further good rebirths, that will lead to our ongoing spiritual development and our progression towards liberation and enlightenment. So this is how we are our own protectors. But we are also our own worst enemies, because when our mind is thinking in a way that is completely discordant from reality, in the way that I was describing before, with utilizing exaggeration towards things, exaggerating the desirable features or exaggerating the faults, we are suffering then and there because our mind is deluded. And we are strengthening our afflictions, whether of attachment or anger, whether towards ourselves or others. And as we strengthen attachment and anger, not only are we suffering now, but we are accumulating the causes that will lead to ever more suffering in the future and ever less ability to deal skillfully with situations. Recognizing that we are our own protector and we are our own enemy, we see that we have a particular responsibility. We have capacity. We are not helpless. We have capacity, and by focusing our mind repeatedly over a sustained period on virtue, every time we see it following desire, following anger, pull our mind back to these various topics of the Dharma. And in this way, we'll start to think ever more in accordance with reality and ever less in these greatly exaggerated ways, which are the minds of attachment and anger. So this is really an important training. It comes down to taking responsibility for our own mind, and thereby by recognizing we are not helpless. This is not something beyond us. Suffering doesn't befall us. Happiness doesn't befall us. We have capacity. We can take control of our destiny.
Dena lamye deda gombala ne yuyi namba sal misai chai lui jindang shu chala yun wa gwebe jegum jawo.
Lama Tsongkhapa then continues. So in the case of cultivating these paths, no matter whether the image of the object appears clearly, the mind's way of apprehending it must be intense and long-lasting, and this requires analytical meditation.
두 세야네양도 제바치도 안 유디 안 디레샤 샘비게 세고르지 되는 하고야다 가고 두야다 데니게 nda이 데니게 가고 전에 데니게 르 진다데 르들이야 지키 르디 데니 슈트하고야다 누바 슈트하고야다 대한 균진부 미유와시 템보체 뇌라 제고민지미지 제고레서 제바 제고민지 나보 미서 나보 하고 말와 하고 세세 나보 하모가지 나보라 비니기 외신 진짜 대바디에 주고 심지 하고 진짜 하고 지와 미다바세 나보 또 하고 말아 되네 심지 지와 미다바 하고로 세와 차로 다디디 온 람 유디를 세월 당한 저게 다 제바체세 유디 파 제바체니 디레샤스 뱅가 세부 기투레스 당보 매바 디네 고미체 세부 기투 디네게 세부디 게 세외지라 디네게 로디다 슈 잡고지다 윤능부 시야라 아니 제홈제고레스 제홈자오스 아야.
So in the case of cultivating these paths, so this is referring to the various meditations that I've mentioned several times, relying on the spiritual teacher, precious human rebirth, and so forth, up to the generation of bodhicitta. These are the paths that are to be cultivated, no matter whether the image or the object appears clearly. So what is being expressed here is that whether one is understanding the topic clearly or not. So the English isn't quite precise, but what the meaning is whether one is understanding the topic clearly or not. That is what appearing clearly to your mind means in this context of analytical meditation. So whether one has understood clearly the explanation of your teacher or not. The mind's way of apprehending it must be intense and long-lasting. So whether one's understanding something clearly or not yet understanding it clearly, one needs to engage in analytical meditation so that one's way of apprehending it can be intense and long-lasting.
초백이 레소루안 제비기 신이 주발라 소베 갑소니 양양제나 셈네 셈네 게 민연베 델라는 조금 작아서스 조금 작아서스 조금 작아서스.
This paragraph then concludes with in the context of practicing shamatha, which enables you to place the mind on whatever object you wish, someone whose mind has been unable to stay on one object will not be able to generate shamatha if he keeps analyzing, and placement meditation is required for that.
ene semmiba la jeju mituba se 당한 저기 대시 동반이 세다 하모가 제바제 김전 삼나 제바체네 디 제홈제 동반이 하고 하제 제바제세 난 내니게 동반이 또 별로되다 바 동반이를 제주도 삼다해도 치르초체 네모도바 차해도 다 semmiba 제주 네모도바세 네모도바세 거라 미도바 제여도 안에 가르스네 미바라 지다라 되되도 제주네 봤으면 레소 롱와치 고고레스 디용알라 신여주 고고레스 제자다 동반이라 미비 신여주나다 산지 구실라 미네 신여주나다 다셈 유텔라 셈 제주도 네제 치르미초와지 제주 네발라 지다 되되도 되투에게 되네게 셈 레롱디 주발라 아니 디갑소 야야네 제바치야 말했어다 제 야야 제바네 삼다 야나 제바제바이나 셈 네바디 용바레스 네바 닝바 네투 마레스 지난 델레 제바 마죠 바제 델야는 가신 코 제지도 네바디 파샤샤 고레스 델레 조금 제고레스 지나다 유지라 미네 유 당한도 다음에 바이나다 동바이나다 구연질이나다 미네 셈제지도 네베시네 두비갑소 제바 지교 말해서 제바 지교 말 될래야 다스 제시신 된제 제주 네바의 샤고를 지공고래 니 공바디 다 조금씩 그래 해서 조금씩 조대 샤바스 그러다 다 자산 말랍서다게 제게서 대산 심미발라 제주 네 미도바세 제주의 네 미도바 갑라 제주의 샤야도 제주 샤미도바지 되모도바 용거래스 제산 될라 하는 하나 저기 안에 양도 될래 제주 네바 곰제 지대 되되도 되투에 셈 레소롱와 강한 르심라 강하면 레소롱와 고고래스 대 레소롱와 신내서로 신내다도 주고래스 대 주발라 유딜에 제바 지겨 말해 제바나 제주 네바도 용고 말해서 베네 제나 셈 셈네 게 미인베세도 되도 지들 되도도 제나 셈네 미인베세도 제바나 셈디 제주 네바도 용말 해야 되다 디가서 제사다 제바 지겨 말데 셈 제주 네바 코나 셈 코나 다가랑 샤고 해서 그러다 이 공부들다 조금씩 되네 해서 그러다.
So I'll just read the English again, because here the English and Tibetans, the order is not quite the same. In the context of practicing shamatha, I usually use the English, calm abiding, which enables you to place the mind on whatever object you wish. Someone whose mind has been unable to stay on one object will not be able to generate shamatha if he keeps analyzing, and placement meditation is required for that. So thus far, the presentation has been primarily on analytical, or solely on analytical meditation. Now, Lama Tsongkhapa comes to talk about placement meditation, or single-pointed meditation. So when one is meditating on, say, for example, emptiness or selflessness, then the meditator will be relying on analytical meditation, analyzing the topic by means of a variety of reasons. But whilst this is indispensable and must be done, calm abiding still needs to be attained. So when we have it in the middle, someone whose mind has been unable to stay on one object. So this is referring to, sounds like distraction, but it means they are engaging in analytical meditation, approaching it from various perspectives. What they need to do is cultivate calm abiding in relation to that object, which we have for us just before that, which enables you to place the mind on whatever object you wish. So when one then has done extensive analysis and has come to a deep meaning or a realization of the object, one then needs to develop calm abiding in relation to it. And then when one develops calm abiding in relation to the object, the last bit of the sentence, one must stop analyzing. One will not be able, what it says here, one will not be able to generate shamatha if he keeps analyzing. So in order to generate calm abiding, at that point in the meditation session, the yogin will stop analyzing and abide, place their mind on the realization of emptiness. This is then how they will develop calm abiding. So first, just to summarize, first they will engage in placement in analytical meditation. And when they come to a realization of emptiness, then they place their mind on the object. So this is starting with analytical meditation and concluding with placement.
치와 미다바서 삼다에도 치와 미다바들로 지기 미다바레도 선비게 삼다로 깨나 항내바 녀다 데레로 슈트라보다 균리원 내발라 데데 야네야도 제바치베 제바치 삼다 제바치 오레스 제바레 데네 안디 로 슈트라보다 균리원 내바도 용거레사지 디르와다가지 유가리네 동반이나 가리나다 당보 마신바데 제바치 김선 삼다 제바치나 하고에도 내내 로 슈트라보다 균리가 지금 그래서다 다양 셈제시 유지를 데레 제홈시 그래서다 다 데네셈 유디를 미바 제지도 내제 셈 가야 칠마도 제지도 내바디 공발라 Gomya de la Johom res, Dene Gomya Kabla Jabacha Yomares, Dela Johom Jiguma Yomares. Deni Mare, Chiwa Mido, some Dadajan, that don't buy in a dame of Uchila. Zijidu Nege, the Gurubushi, Uchi, Zijidu Nene, Semchur, Ziju Nege, some Gombe Kabla, Johomre Dela Jabacha Yomares.
With the meditation topics mentioned earlier, for example, impermanence of life, there one engages in analytical meditation, and one needs to do so with a mind that has those characteristics of where the meditation is long-lasting, so one's not being distracted. The mind has great strength, so that one is deeply engaged with the topic. And thirdly, that the mind is subdued from contrary minds, so minds which are the opposites, unhelpful habitual tendencies. So those three qualities need to be cultivated with all of the meditation topics, including that of emptiness or selflessness. But the added feature in relation to emptiness and selflessness is that subsequent to one's analytical meditation, one engages in placement meditation. And placement meditation is meditation without analysis. It follows analysis, but it is then where one just abides on the object of emptiness.
Di rimbati chasada muishi kabla mibo komechi miba khaga yongre mado to jowa da nju da ani chige tunzami ko so nyamne chi rimba chasada ngaju gom ganes kyabene chigba chasan 고고래 사지 디지 shu 사지 로다 되네 shu 나 되네 슈네다 곰들이야 제곰나 조금 니요래 세상 곰디 야와라 제곰나 조금 니주고네 야고래 제고래 사디 다 제곰 사디 안젤렘 저기 뒤에비 조금 니 괴비 니유토네 냠는 제고바디 룸 마서나 한자와 자먹으면 송비게 되게나 대중어도게 아니지게 다들이 조지 가소리 가사 계시시발에 심에 손에게 납두이다 온두스는 손에 룸디게 콩디게 바장제 안다 제홈사디 두센데네 된실 제홈라 그래 된데네 조홈라 그래 사디 온둠산다 제바디 뭐서야디 다딩하서 가산다 드링기 시에게다 손에 쉬야게다 된다디 임포디 뒤로 돌드나.
To briefly summarize what we've looked at last night, this morning and this afternoon, is that whatever one is engaging in meditating on, the structure of the meditation is the same. One starts with the preparatory practices, those 6, followed by the main meditation, and that then has a conclusion. Within the main meditation, there is variety, but the preparation and the conclusion, no matter what that main meditation may be, this we keep the same. So if the main meditation is on the spiritual teacher, one will go through the steps of cultivating faith, through recalling his many qualities in relation to his behavior, speech, and mind, as well as generating a deep respect through remembering his kindness. And if one is meditating on a different topic, such as precious human rebirth or the impermanence of life, this is the part here, the main body of the meditation, which will change. But all of these meditations are not only started with preparation and end with a conclusion, but these are analytical meditations. And this is what we looked at today. With first, Lama Tsongkhapa had 2 quotations from Maitreya's Ornament of Mahayana Sutra, and then Ornament of Clear Realization, followed by a quotation from Shantideva's Compendium of Trainings. And here, the great importance of analytical meditation was emphasized, the need to meditate with reasons repeatedly over a sustained period so as to bring about a radical change to our way of thinking. And then, lastly, right now, we've looked briefly at placement meditation, the second of the 2 kinds. There's outlines translated as 2 kinds of practice, but it refers to 2 types of meditation, analytical and placement.
다 되게 될 최백에다 근데 저어들이야 꽤 망보는 공로 휴심을 기그래서지 송바나싱이 될 최신 당한들이야 계침으로지 삼단나리야 소소소 강을 치지 소소리야 괜찮야다 소소장 괜단에 이무게다 강을 채우고 최고래서 니세에게 된다래 삼단의 간단으로서는 당하지 보말에 차상에 강을 유해 짱짱이 선배습니다 차상에 괜여봐마도 괜면 강야 산제다데 자주마도 신 코바 차상에 유해를 세배 삼다다 되니게 소수기 연된 유해바 강 유해바되게 어등이 디체바 연된 디체바 되네가래 디 신규세배 소소고 두신 연된데 소소리 될야 제수 일어나지다 뽑아게 두 개베나 안 소수기 제 소소배 시우 교를 시작하지 강을 주세 이모디파 마야야기 캬바 용그레스 지난디 삼다데 되네 강아 테베까블라 되네 삼다데 판도 용그레스 사실 다 디쇼르야디 슈베이 안데 가서 드레데 샤샤로와
I just want to then conclude with repeating this one little part that Lama Tsongkhapa mentioned here about the process of how our mind works in terms of attachment and anger. And really to take this and reflect on it, incorporate it in your meditation, coming to recognize how when attachment arises, we completely misconstrue whatever it is we desire, whatever it is we attach to. Our mind exaggerates its good aspects, its good qualities. And so too, with what we dislike, our mind exaggerates its faults. So here we are not seeing things as they are. And likewise, when we look at ourselves, our mind exaggerates various aspects. And either we become puffed up with pride, or depression arises thinking that we are no good. So here I encourage you to really reflect on this process. This is how our mind works. And this is what we look to cut, to move beyond. In the world, the only beings who can validly be said to be free of faults are the Buddhas and the foe destroyers as well. The rest of us, we have our faults, and that's something we recognize and slowly we try to work away from. So if one has a lot of pride, then one needs to be aware that we're exaggerating our good features. We seeing ourselves through this exaggerated lens. But so too, if we have depression or we feel down on ourselves, there too, we are not seeing ourselves as we really are, but we're exaggerating those perceived faults. And in all these contexts, whether it's relating to those outside of us or things outside of us or ourselves, the practice is to come to recognize, to see things as they really are, free of exaggeration. So thank you. Then we'll conclude there for this weekend. Thank you.